Getting my bearings. Well, welcome everyone. So
欢迎大家。
happy to have you here tonight. Sorry, Joshie, I think
I pressed the button. I just pressed the button. Sorry. We're all
Okay.
set.
Okay, sorry. We'll start fresh, everyone. Welcome to this evening's presentation. We're so delighted to have all of you here, our members, so grateful to our interpreters and of course our featured guests. Tonight's featured presentation, if you didn't see already, is on autism supports and services for students with autism at the Boston Public Schools. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Kelsey Brendel, the current interim chair of SpEdPAC. And I wanted to take a couple of minutes just to tell you about who we are and what we do and why it should matter to you, quite frankly. And then we'll follow that with just a couple of very brief announcements and spend most of the time getting right on to our speakers and presentations because we know you have lots of questions for them and that's why you're here. But first of all, SpEdPAC, for those of you who don't already know, is the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And we are primarily here to amplify your voice as parents and guardians and caretakers of students with disabilities in the Boston Public Schools. And yours is the most important voice. So having a place where you can speak it louder, it will be readily heard, is a really incredible platform to be able to offer here. And we're really hoping you'll come back and often. Parents and guardians of students with disabilities know all too well that often that voice can feel extinguished. You don't know where and how to use it, advocating for your child. And this is one of those places that you can both come to hear more information, hear and learn more about resources and get support as we work to advise the Boston Public Schools on matters that affect your student and every child in the district with a disability. So again, we're thrilled to have you here. With again, a couple of announcements ahead of us. It's sort of an exciting time every spring because we're coming that much closer to our annual elections. And so please indulge me for a moment when I give my pitch about how much not only are we happy to have you here as members, but we really would love for your involvement to increase within the organization. We need your help. So a word about involvement in your part. We need it, we want it, and I would love to remind everyone this is a working board and we're able to support events like this with professional speakers with expertise and all of the kind of information and resources that's helpful to our families because we have members running the show, to be honest. And we really need your involvement in considering an elected position or other ways to become involved or volunteer. So a word about that, because again, spring elections are right around the corner. Most importantly, our families, as you know, are impacted by the work that is happening at BPS. And so your voice here makes that collective voice even stronger. When we go to partner with the district and advise them on the things that most matter to you and your family, you are the experts in this work. What's happening in your household and what you've learned about your child navigating school systems and all the services and supports that you are working to get on your child's behalf do make you an expert, and we don't want that to go to waste. So this is my very impassioned plea to say, please, please go home maybe after tonight's meeting and ask yourself, ask your friends, ask your neighbors, those that you know at school, how best and what you could bring to this organization, because we know there's so much talent out there and we're just hoping you'll consider running for an elected position or any other kind of volunteer opportunity. In short, if you hear me begging and getting very excited, it's because I am, and I hope you'll be really tempted to learn more about individual positions. And we'll meet with you and talk anytime to sort of tease out the difference between different ones so you can find one that's suitable for you. In our last meeting, if you remember, we made a commitment to spend a couple of minutes in the general meeting highlighting specific positions. Now, all of our board positions are coming up in May for reelection. So that means, there's some sort of homework you have to do about which one might suit you when you're thinking about running for one or nominating somebody else. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of those here so that you could, again, go home and think about them. And I noticed my colleague Andrea also put those board roles in the chat. So my hope is that, again, you will go home, you'll talk to your friends, your neighbors, you'll think when you hear about a certain board role that it might sound right up your alley, your level of expertise would fit well within that role, or somebody else for whom that would be true. So we're just going to highlight a couple of those in each of the remaining meetings before the May general election. So you've got lots of time to think about them. So for tonight, this will just take a couple of minutes, but we wanted to sort of tease out the difference between what we mean when we say there are 3, member at large board positions available, and there's one alternate board member position available. And, all those terms and words get thrown around a lot. We wanted really you to know what is kind of the difference, so you could go home and think on that. And very quickly, if you were to become a board member at large, it really means in terms of day-to-day expectations that you'd be expected to attend our board meetings once a month. You'd attend meetings like this, our general monthly meetings, and you would attend the quarterly meetings scheduled with our BPS superintendent and assist in all of the planning of these kinds of meetings, supporting them and doing subcommittee work that you're interested and engaged in. And just working to support, the administrative functioning of what keeps these kind of volunteer boards alive. So I've said too much, but I do hope you'll go home and think about it. More importantly, we've set up a couple of board inquiry sessions. And those are really going to be opportunities in the next few weeks, sort of like a coffee hour, to come and ask any question you've ever had about board involvement, board engagement. What does it really mean? What does the work actually look like from the inside, from the outside, so that you can decide if that would be, something you'd like to pursue. So we'll put the dates out on the website and all of that, but we have one scheduled for April 9th, and I believe one for April 11th, but those will be good opportunities for you to stop in very casually if you have an interest, again, in running for an elected position, to ask any of us questions about, just all the nitty-gritty that goes into running for a board seat. So we'll tell you more about that a little later, but just wanted to get that out there. So come, ask anything, learn more, and spread the word, please. I would say also, just to know, as you think about running perhaps for an elected position, those of you who are a parent, a guardian, a grandparent, an ed surrogate, and you have to have a child on either a 504 or an IEP to be eligible to run for an elected seat. So just keep that in mind, but more importantly, think about the ways you'd like to be involved, and we will always find a way to use your talents. So that's enough on that little update. The only other announcement that I have for membership tonight is I noticed that the Boston Center for Independent Living is offering an upcoming workshop for families with disabilities. I believe it's called Supporting Independent Lives. I have not been to it yet. I'm heard it's a really, really great one. So if you are interested in attending, it's April 13th, I believe, in the evening. I think it's over Zoom. But again, later and offline, happy to connect you with resources to either attend, to RSVP. We can tell you more about it, and we'll put the link on the website. So with that said, let's get going. A special thank you again to the interpreters. They do incredible work. We couldn't, host these sort of meetings without them. So really grateful for them. Let's get going on our actual presentation. I just want to tell you a little bit about who's in the room. We have this evening, in addition to our presenters, we've got a couple of folks supporting, which we're thrilled about. We have Steph Moreau and Erica Andresen, who are both here as supervisors for ABA, and they will be supporting in the presentations and to handle all of your questions. And we'll have a dedicated question and answer period at the end, so we can be sure to get to them, to as many of them as possible. And for our featured speakers tonight, we have two. We are so excited to welcome Dr. Lisa Nowinski, who is the clinical director of psychology and training at the Lurie Center. Many of you may have heard of that. It's housed within MGH, Mass General Hospital. So we are really excited to have her. And then we will also hear from Zachary Houston, who's the Assistant Director for Applied Behavior Analysis at the Boston Public Schools. And as I mentioned, he's joined by his team as well to support some of those questions that will come up in the chat. And we'll be sure to get to as many of them as we can. And then also want to welcome from BPS, I know Frank Vicente is here, the Deputy Chief of Instructional Supports. So delighted he's joined us as well. One last housekeeping detail, and then I promise we're moving on. Speak slowly, slowly, slowly as you're presenting. That's the best gift you can give the interpreters. So if you hear me reminding you to slow down, that's why. And I would just remind all of our guests, our members, this is a public forum. It's a posted recording. So just remember, you know, what you learned growing up, discretion, decorum, try to keep private things that are meant for your family to yourself. If you want to follow up on a specific question about your family or your child, we can help direct you in that direction, you know, so that you can get a question answered offline, but we'll keep things pretty general in terms of Q&A here. And I always remind everyone at the end, because it's my favorite edict for myself, that every single question you might have is one that tons of other people have. So please always ask your questions, because I can more than guarantee you, for any question you have, there are 5 people in the background afraid to ask it as well. And it always ends up being really illuminating, and everyone's really grateful that you stepped forth to do that. So thank you all to our membership. Let's turn it over to our first presenter, Dr. Nowinski, and we will have a lovely evening and wrap things up with questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me join you tonight. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see a couple of slides with some information that we'll be talking through this evening. If you have any trouble with seeing those slides, let me know and I can try to readjust. Hopefully things look good. Again, thank you so much for letting me join you all tonight. I'm so glad to be here. As Kelsey said, I am a clinical neuropsychologist by training and the clinical director out at the Mass General Hospital Lurie Center for Autism. We are, for those of you who are not familiar with our organization, we are located out in Lexington, and we're a multidisciplinary clinical and research center that also does a lot of training and advocacy. And our mission really is to support individuals with autism and their families across the lifespan. So we really care for folks from birth to death, and are really pleased to be able to provide that care in such an ongoing fashion. We have a number of specialists on site, from developmental pediatrics to psychology and psychiatry. We're also co-located with an outpatient Spalding Rehabilitation Center site. So that allows us to include our therapy colleagues like speech therapists and occupational therapists right on site at the Lurie Center. Tonight, I hope to be able to cover 3 main topics with you and leave plenty of time for questions, because I know that's so important. But first, we will be speaking briefly about what to do immediately following a diagnosis. I imagine that many of you on the call tonight have received an autism diagnosis. You may be at different points in your journey, but for those of you for whom this is sort of new or your first steps, I want to make sure you have some information about what to do next. We're also going to talk about how to access various private therapies and supports. And finally, as the clinical director at a multidisciplinary medical center, I really must talk with you about some of the common medical and psychiatric conditions that people with autism often experience. Each of you on this call tonight are really your child's best advocate. And so understanding these potential conditions will be really important for your ability to monitor and support your child's well-being over time. So Let's jump right in. So you have an autism diagnosis, now what? Really the first thing I encourage you to do, and no matter where you are on your journey, it may be helpful to take stock of who is on your team. Identify with your pediatrician or with the evaluator who diagnosed your child what kinds of services and supports your child might need so that you can really start to collect all the different players who are going to be critical in supporting your child. Obviously, a huge next step is sharing a diagnosis of autism with your school team. This is really important. And it would mean that you would either be requesting an IEP or reconvening your team to review a new diagnosis for your child. This step is really important because many of the supports and services that your child will receive for their autism diagnosis and related learning challenges will happen within the school environment. I also want you to consider, though, and we're going to talk a little bit tonight from my perspective about what additional private services or therapies might be helpful for your child. Does your child have any support needs outside of school? Are there things that you can be doing at home or in community-based therapies that might help your child's progress? And we'll talk about some of those things here in just a minute. So although the school really may be one of the primary places where your child will receive instruction, direct therapy, and support, your child may benefit from other private therapies for things that your child really is entitled to and can receive through your medical insurance, either private medical insurance or state-funded mass health plans. This could include therapies such as speech therapy if your child has language delays or communication challenges, occupational therapy, thinking about building functional skills and motor skills and supporting sensory processing for your child. Physical therapy, applied behavior analysis, which I think we're going to hear about from some of our presenters later this evening.
Do you mind slowing down just a little bit?
Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. So your child may benefit from applied behavior analysis. And then also counseling or mental health therapies. This might be something like talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. And as you think about this list of all 5 of these different services, you may be wondering, how do I access these things, right? And it is challenging. I don't want to imply that accessing any of these services is easy, but it is possible. And I want to try to give you some information tonight that will help you access the services that your child might need. So the first thing that you might consider doing is to ask your primary care doctor for a referral to one of these specialists. Most insurance companies require a referral from a medical doctor like your primary care doctor in order to see somebody like a speech therapist or occupational therapist or physical therapist. And so your first point of contact might be calling your pediatrician's office or sending a message to ask them to refer your child to speech therapy, for example. Your pediatrician can make that referral within your insurance network and can talk with you about what clinics might be available in your area. In the Boston area, Spalding Rehabilitation Hospital has a lot of local sites around the area, and they do offer many of these therapy services. The second thing you may consider doing is to ask your insurance company directly for a list of in-network providers. This is particularly helpful if you're looking for somebody like a counselor or therapist. And there are some websites available that I can include in additional resources that may help you search for therapists. One helpful resource is the Psychology Today website, which allows you to select various specialties. You can include searching for a specialty in autism, for example, when you're searching for a mental health provider. I also want to pause to make sure that everybody knows about this MABHA website, which is really a very important resource to help you find ABA providers who are accepting new clients and able to take on care for your child. This website, you can change the website into many different languages, and it is really geared towards MBHP or mass health insurance plans, though many of the companies included on this website also will accept private insurance if your child happens to be on a private or employer-sponsored insurance plan. So if you're having trouble or wondering how to access applied behavior analysis through your medical insurance, this is a great website to start with, and I'd encourage you to take a look. And then I want to make sure to highlight two really important resources. If at the end of the day you're having trouble accessing any of these private therapies for your child, there are two really wonderful teams. One is local to us in Boston, and that is the Autism Insurance Resource Center. You can see their website here, but they also are very responsive to email and telephone calls, so you can reach out to them with any questions that you have if you're having difficulty accessing any therapeutic services like ABA through your medical insurance. They are an excellent resource to help advocate for your child to get these services covered through your medical insurance. So take a look at their website. They also offer a number of presentations and have a ton of fact sheets that are already translated into many different languages available on their website. I also want to include a link to the autism response team that you can see here is run through the Autism Speaks organization. The autism response team is made up of a number of incredible individuals, really, who work all across the country to help support parents who have questions about accessing supports and services. So you can send them an email saying, I can't find a speech therapist near me. And they will respond, a real live person will respond and try to help you find the service that you're looking for. So it's really a tremendous resource. Both of these are available free of any cost and to anybody who needs support. So hold on to those websites and take a look, particularly if you're having difficulty accessing any private therapies for your child outside of the school system. And the last thing that we're going to talk about before I open things up for questions are some of the common medical and psychiatric co-occurring conditions. But many children with autism do experience co-occurring medical conditions. And it's really important that you know about these things so that you can watch for signs of any of these difficulties in your child. Your child may not be able to tell you that they're experiencing one of these conditions. So understanding each of them will be important for supporting your child as they grow and develop. First, I want to talk a little bit about sleep difficulties. These are very common in children with autism. Up to 50 to 80% of children with autism can have sleep difficulties. This can include—
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Nowinski. For interpretation, just slow down one more time.
Sure. Yeah,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Thanks, Kelsey. Sleep challenges can include difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, or even really early morning awakenings, getting up really early in the morning. Challenging daytime behaviors can also increase if a child's not getting enough restful sleep. So if your child is experiencing difficulty with sleep, I want you to talk first to your pediatrician and consider working with a psychologist or your behavioral team to help improve sleep habits and behaviors that will support optimal sleep and rest. For many of you on the call, I imagine that you know if your child's not sleeping, you are also not sleeping. And so I talk about this first because it really is one of the most important medical conditions that we can address and help to better manage to improve both your child's quality of life and your sleep as well. The second thing that's important for you to understand is that gastrointestinal or GI issues are also very common in autism. This can include things like constipation, abdominal pain, gastroesophageal reflux disease or GERD, encopresis or incontinence, so having toileting accidents, and also highly restrictive diets. So children who eat only a very limited number of foods or have some difficulty eating a nutritious and varied diet. Again, if your child is experiencing any of these concerns, I want you to talk with your pediatrician. Many pediatricians can help manage basic gastrointestinal symptoms. And if they're not able to help you manage those symptoms, they can help refer you to a specialist or a therapist who can work with you on things like behavioral therapy or feeding therapy to address some of these gastrointestinal concerns. Children with autism also can have higher rates of some neurological complications like seizures. And although there isn't one type of seizure or EEG abnormality in autism, we do know that seizures often start for children with autism either very early in childhood or later in adolescence when your child enters and moves through puberty. So we want to keep an eye on any atypical behaviors or possible seizure episodes when your child's very young, and then again as they're getting older and moving through puberty. There's no special medication for patients with autism who have seizures, but you would work with your doctor or a neurologist on typical seizure management, which does typically require a medication to help control those seizures. In addition, children with autism can show a number of other motor behaviors, such as repetitive motor mannerisms like hand flapping, gross or fine motor delays, gait abnormalities or walking differences like toe walking, walking on your tiptoes, or what we call hypotonia or low tone, which you might notice in your child being kind of floppy or having difficulty sitting up and holding their core upright, sort of low core muscle strength. Again, these are concerns that you'd want to talk with your pediatrician about and ask if it would be appropriate for you to have a referral for your child to work with a physical therapist or other specialist to help address any of these motor differences. And then the last thing we'll talk about is pain. And it's really important for you to know that children with autism often experience pain differently because sensory processing is often different or disrupted in autism. Some children with autism have a very high pain tolerance, or they may be unable to tell you if they're experiencing pain or discomfort. And so it's really important that you know this and that you watch for unusual changes in your child's behavior. If you're unsure if your child's experiencing pain, it's often a good idea to take them in to see your pediatrician if you notice a particular change in their behavior, to make sure that they're not experiencing an acute medical problem like constipation or an ear infection, for example. It's really important to keep an eye on those behaviors so that your doctor can help you rule out any medical issues. And then we'll speak just briefly about some of the common co-occurring psychiatric conditions. Anxiety is at the top of the list. Anywhere from 40 to 80% of children with autism have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. And this is compared to less than 30% of typically developing children. So it's much, much more common in individuals with autism. At least 40% of children with autism also have an ADHD diagnosis or an attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And they may are maybe less likely to have a positive response to typical ADHD medications. So you'll want to know that and watch that carefully if you're thinking about medication supports for ADHD with your child. Children with autism also show really high rates of irritability, mood problems, and then what we kind of lump together are called interfering or challenging behaviors. 30% of children with autism can have very severe tantrums, with 25% or so of children demonstrating some aggressive behaviors, and up to 16% of children engaging in deliberate self-injury, which might be really problematic and certainly something that you would be quite concerned about if you saw in your child. And so again, these psychiatric conditions or behaviors are often much more common in individuals with autism. And I want you to keep an eye on any of these symptoms and talk with your pediatrician if you have concerns that your child may be demonstrating any of these conditions. I do want to point you just to a couple of important resources. There are a number of toolkits available on the web. And I think one of the really important things for you to do as a parent or caregiver for someone with autism is to start to identify where you can get high quality and reliable information. When you have a question, where can you find those answers? And these toolkits are particularly helpful. They give lots of great advice in supporting toilet training and sleep hygiene and puberty. They give information about how to make decisions around medication use and all sorts of things. So I'd encourage you to take a look at these resources. And then also wanted to give you just a couple of links to connect with us at the Lurie Center. If you do have any interest in being connected with our research program, there's a QR code here that you're welcome to take a look at. Hopefully you'll get a copy of these slides. We also have this last QR code here will take you to our main website, and we do have a number of workshops, caregiver workshops, to provide information to folks like you around a variety of topics. So one of those is a workshop for parents of people who have newly been diagnosed with autism. That would be a great place to start. But in addition to that, we have workshops that help parents to better access medical supports for their child. So it's called a medical desensitization workshop. If your child's having trouble tolerating visits at the doctor, we'd love for you to come and learn more about how you can support your child's medical care as they get older. We also have workshops training caregivers in how to de-escalate and manage challenging behaviors at home. So lots of things available, and I'd encourage you to take a look at those workshop offerings on our website as well. I'll go ahead and stop my share here and just see if there are any questions or if we want to hold those for the end. I'll let Kelsey tell me what's next.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was a really great start, certainly for me, and hearing that even again, and for a lot of our families. So thank you so much for that. I think what we'll do in the interest of time, if it makes sense for everyone, is I think we're going to wait on the questions until the second portion and then open the floor up. And for those of you waiting and knowing already what yours are, we'll alternate as we can between questions we see in the chat and a couple live questions, and hopefully we'll get to them all. So thank you so much, Dr. Nowinski. And next we're going to hear from Zachary Houston, who is here from the Boston Public Schools to tell us more about the program and features of, a broad variety of resources within BPS, and I'll turn it over to him.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for having me here. I'm going to start my screen share and get that set, so I'm not trying to do two things at once. There we go. I want to first say, while my title is Assistant Director for Applied Behavior Analysis, and you're probably going to have to remind me to slow down a couple of times. I will. Dr. Nowinski, you're not alone. It's a lot of information in a short period of time. I'm here not only as a behavior analyst for the Boston Public Schools, but also a fierce and passionate advocate for neurodiverse people, autistic people, and people who self-identify as people with autism. I've worked in the field for the past 22 years. And I have met as many different people on the spectrum as you could possibly imagine. And the most important thing for you to walk away from this is every individual with autism is individual and unique. Autism does not present the same way twice. And so what we are here to talk about are some general resources and strategies that may be helpful for you. But most importantly, echoing what Dr. Nowinski said, working closely with your medical providers, working closely with the professionals in your life to find the right fit for the right services for your child. So specific to Boston Public Schools, I'm going to speak about some of the autism supports that we offer as a district, and also speak to some misunderstandings and misnomers that people often have about autism in Boston Public Schools. So first and foremost, I want to speak to what the settings for students with autism are in BPS. And in short, there is no setting for people with autism in Boston Public Schools. It is wherever they need to be with whatever sort of instructional supports they need, that's where they should be being served. We have 51 students in Boston Public Schools who are on 504 plans. We have 514 students in the general education environment or full inclusion environment. We have, oops, sorry, my window is on top of my slides. There we go. 132 students who are receiving resource and related services only, about 907 students in our ABA strand classrooms with primary disabilities of autism, and about 169 students in other settings that are also separate settings outside of the applied behavior analysis classrooms. Now, this is only students with a primary disability of autism. There are many other students that have a variety of other primary disabilities and may have a secondary disability of autism. And I feel like this slide is really important because it's important to understand that just because your child has autism doesn't mean that there's any one particular setting that they must go to or should align to. It's really about providing the services and supports that the student needs. We build those, and then setting is a secondary part of that conversation. Some national and local information I think that is also really important to any conversation about autism in public schools. So the rates of autism have been rising for at least the past 20 years, if not more. And our most recent data tell us that 1 in 36 children have autism. And then in this most recent set of data from the Center for Disease Control, it's the first time among children 8 years old that the prevalence of ASD was lower among white children than among other racial and ethnic groups, reversing the direction of racial and ethnic differences in ASD prevalence observed in the past. Now, I think that speaks quite a bit to historic bias around diagnosis. And I think it also speaks to access to medical care and resources. So this is the first time that we are seeing some of those identification gaps starting to close and having a more balanced identification rate rather than this being a primarily white disorder. 1 in 25 boys has been identified with autism, and 1 in 100 girls have been identified with autism. It's likely the girls number is an underrepresentation. It is there's a lot of bias wrapped up into girls with autism and historical beliefs and perceptions around that. So there is a big disparity in terms of rates of diagnosis between boys and girls. There are lots of people looking into this and really reflecting on these data and wondering whether or not the disparity is not as significant as the data tell us right now, and it could also be a misidentification of rates. BPS's autism rates, according to primary disability as of 2021, are 1 in 30.7. So that's 3.3% of our student population, or about 1,600 students with autism as their primary disability on their IEPs. This is just a graph of other districts in the state of Massachusetts. Boston is that light blue line right in the middle. So our rising rates of autism from under 1% of our students in 2008 to creeping up towards 4% of our students as recent as 2023 are right in the middle of other districts. So we're seeing similar rates and a similar rate of rise to other districts in Massachusetts. I also wanted to take a moment to just make sure that you are all present to the 7 things that must be discussed in every IEP meeting for every student with autism by law. It is required that the district consider these things and provide services and supports to address them. The first is verbal and nonverbal communication needs. Second is the need to develop social interaction skills and proficiencies. Third, needs resulting from unusual responses to sensory experiences. Fourth, needs resulting from resistance to change and transitions. Fifth, needs resulting from engagement in repetitive activities or stereotyped movements. Sixth, needs for positive behavioral interventions, strategies, and supports to address behavioral difficulties. Seventh, the need for assistive technology. And I always feel like it's important to say, and also any other needs that are resulting from their disability that impact progress in the general curriculum, including social and emotional development. You have a right to ensure that all of those areas are addressed in any IEP meeting for a student with autism. And if you don't feel that those areas were adequately addressed, I encourage you to please bring that up in the meeting and ask the providers to please review how they feel they've discussed those items. The coordinator of special education should review that as part of the meeting to name how and under what circumstances those items were discussed. If that's not clear for you or you don't feel it was adequately done, please, by all means, raise that in the meeting and or let us know. Now, before I go into the services and supports that we have for students with autism, I wanted to take a small moment just to encourage us all to reflect about ableism. Autism is a representation of who a person is. It is a part of their neurology, their physiology, and how they show up in the world. It is not an illness or a sickness to be cured. And so it would be inappropriate, for example, to target for lack of a better term, the autisticness of an individual for repair or fixing. This is not something we're trying to cure or change. So ableism, according to the dictionary, is discrimination or prejudice against people with disabilities. The idea of discrimination against people based on their disability goes far beyond the golden rule. It's not just be nice to people with disabilities. Our schools and communities have an obligation to build an environment that is supportive of our students and what they need to be successful. And what that means for all of you is that your child has a right to be who they are in our schools, and our schools have an obligation to build an environment that is supportive and respectful and responsive to them and their needs, specifically to their sensory needs and their needs for both certain types of relationships and also time away from relationships, as well as all of the rest of those 7 items that we discussed and any other thing that comes up. We would not expect a person in a wheelchair to climb the stairs and make their legs work to be able to do so. We'd build them a ramp. The same is true for our students with disabilities, specifically our autistic students or students with autism as they choose to be called. We need to build environments that are supportive of them rather than expecting them to surmount the challenges that those environments present. So one of the things that I am very excited to talk about is my area of discipline, applied behavior analysis. So 95 to 98% of everything people do, or any animal for that matter, is learned. Even things not learned happen for a reason. Nothing happens for no reason whatsoever, and all learning follows basic rules. If our kids can learn one set of behaviors, they can learn another the same way. And applied behavior analysis is focused on helping students meet their goals to effectively communicate and access the world around them. We are not selecting behaviors that are for convenience for ourselves. They are to support our students to access their environments, their communities, and follow the goals that they have for themselves. First and foremost, behavior is communication. For many of our students, engaging in these behaviors may be the best way that they have to self-advocate and let us know when something is wrong. We should pay attention to that. When our students might be presenting what some people might call challenging behavior, that might be the best way that they have to let someone know that something's going wrong. So when we work to support our students with autism, our intervention should focus on building an environment that's supportive to their needs. In order for students to be available for learning, we have to create an environment in which they feel safe and supported. That's the baseline requirement for any student. One thing that can be very confusing in Boston Public Schools that I always want to speak about is the difference between ABA services and what we call our ABA strand settings. ABA services are provided in a session with explicit focus on specific skills needed to access instruction in the classroom setting. This occurs in all settings across the district and would be included as a part of your student's IEP. Our ABA strand settings, our ABA-based teaching is embedded throughout the school day and incorporated into all teaching opportunities across the day. This instructional model exists in the ABA strand classrooms, and then we have our both overlap. Both are based on the principles of applied behavior analysis, with a major focus on the development of critical skills, or what we call CUSPs, and functional language, developing group instruction skills, which is a critical goal for all students because life occurs in groups, and both occur either one-on-one or in small groups when appropriate. So oftentimes it's smaller group targeted instruction. So working with ABA staff and BCBAs, which is board certified behavior analysts, that's the credential that I hold. ABA staff are an important member of your team. They have advanced training and skills that can help with many challenges, from teaching learners with unique learning styles to responding to challenging behaviors in an appropriate and supportive manner that helps students learn functional ways to get their needs met. Good teaching already incorporates many of the principles of applied behavior analysis, and having an applied behavior analysis trained person on your team means that we can help to tweak when things are not quite going as planned and that it is resulting in distress for the student. This could be as simple as an occasional consult for many students. In addition to applied behavior analysis, there are a myriad of other important and very helpful therapeutic interventions that you can access through your student's IEP. One of which is counseling and therapeutic intervention. Counseling and therapeutic interventions focus on supporting our students with social stories to help them make sense of the world around them, group counseling to build social skills, individual counseling, and autism support groups. Skills that may need to be taught by a counseling interventionist, perspective taking, frustration tolerance, self-regulation, coping skills, and other social emotional learning skills. In addition to counseling, we also, this is one of the 7 items that should be discussed in every IEP meeting. We also have services and supports that would focus on environmental modifications for your child. Now, this would look at things like consistent routines, previewing changes in routines, visual schedules, a space that might be clear of clutter or distracting items, a cool down corner or a space to be able to separate when the student needs to remove themselves from the sometimes chaotic and loud environments that can happen in our classrooms, a designated space to safely regulate, transitions to and from the classroom, and checklists of expected behaviors, among many, many other things. Those are just some common examples that should be present in all of our classrooms in the event that a student needs them. In addition to environmental modifications, there are also sensory strategies and supports. We actually have a guidance document for this that was built by Ann Trecker, not recently anymore, but a very beloved occupational therapist for the district. As she was going into retirement, she and I together built some sensory strategies based on our years of collaboration working together as a guidance document for occupational therapists and other staff working in Boston Public Schools. So definitions of sensory strategies would be things that would be used in a classroom as a strategy, like fidget tools, balls to sit on, tea stools, having exercise groups, movement breaks, etc. in the classroom. These could be available to all students in the classroom and kept in break areas. They don't just have to be for specific students, but they could also be specific items that specific students need. They could be things an entire class can do, like a sensory table with rice, water, etc. Those exercise groups and movement breaks. Individual plans can be developed as needed based on assessments administered by the occupational therapist. And they should not be implemented as a consequence strategy or to de-escalate crisis behaviors. And that's a really important point. As has come up a couple of times as I was paying attention during Dr. Nowinski's post, part of autism, right, is that our individuals have a different way of processing the world around them. And so we should not be creating situations where they need to do something to get access to those sensory strategies, or that they should not be used to control or change behavior. These sensory strategies should be available and present to our students at all times because they're tools that they may use to help them to be able to engage with an environment that may sometimes be triggering or challenging to be around. In addition, going back to that ableism point, we have an obligation as a community to really think about the ways in which our behavior and how we show up is impacting how our students are able to safely show up and participate. And so that goes both ways. So examples might be a student, a sensory strategy might be developed by an OT and the student's teacher. For example, a specific sensory diet, a weighted vest, or a brushing protocol. It might be a direct service provided by the occupational therapist, either inside or outside of the classroom. And it should never, again, I'm going to keep saying it, it should never be implemented as a consequence strategy or to de-escalate crisis behaviors. Here are some sensory supports do's and don'ts from our occupational therapy team. You should have regularly scheduled breaks based on a classroom schedule and the student's needs. It should be dependent upon students' needs in consultation with the teacher and occupational therapist. Does the student have the ability to request it? If yes, continue to support the student to request their wants and needs. If no, the team should work in conjunction with the speech therapist and occupational therapist to teach the student to functionally request so that they can make their needs known in a safe and functional way. The student should not ever be denied sensory strategies if they are not able to request them. Sensory breaks should never be earned. Sensory strategies are a tool, not something that is earned because students enjoy it. They need to learn to use it in this way. Some don'ts for sensory strategies. Right after, you should not use sensory strategies right after a challenging behavior. We don't want it to be reinforcing for the challenging behavior. Now, this is something that Ann Trecker and I worked really hard on in our sensory protocols as a district. That's not to say to not make them available. It's specifically focusing on not adding additional sensory strategies that are not constantly and regularly available to the student in a time of crisis, because that could do harm to the student's overall sensory profile and ability to regulate in the future. You should also reflect on which strategies are appropriate during a challenging behavior. Now, that would be any strategy or support that was available to the student prior to the student becoming dysregulated. Those should continue to be available. Staff should not, however, make new environments or strategies available to students during a crisis, as this could likely reinforce the challenging behavior and potentially confuse the student as to when resources are and are not available and how they access them. One example would be, while dysregulated, ensuring the student has access to their Chewy, which has been available all day, in order to meet their oral sensory needs. And I'm very ahead of schedule, which is surprising for me. For anybody who knows me, I can be a little more verbose than I intend to be. So Kelsey, if there's anything else you'd like me to focus on, I can spend a couple more minutes, or we can go right into questions.
No, I think this is actually a great accident, Zach, so that's perfect. And no, it puts us in a great position to, feature what's really the most important at the end of the day, which is getting to the questions from families. So I think what we'll do, and Dr. Nowinski, fine with you as well. I'm sure I'm going to take a couple live questions, and then pivot back to the chat as appropriate, and I'll try to spin them out to whoever might most appropriately answer them. But both of you, feel free to fire away when you see something that seems to be fitting with your area of expertise. To our members, again, this is your time. I really hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. But this is your time, and we have a lot more left of it than we thought we would. So anyone who has a question for either Dr. Nowinski or Zachary, please let us know by raising your hand in the chat. One of the questions, while we're sort of working with, ordering those chat questions, that I thought was relevant to the whole group, that I'd love to raise here, is I saw somebody ask, let's see, a question for Dr. Nowinski was, could she explain as plainly as possible what is autism? I think a lot of people don't understand it, and I think many people think that autism is something separate from who their child actually is. It's a difference in brain writing and not a disease that can be cured. And Zach spoke to that as well, but I wonder if either one of you could take a stab at tackling that. I think it's a great one for the group.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and then pass things to Zach. I'm sure we have lots of similar important things to highlight. I appreciate this question, and I think it's really important. So autism is absolutely a difference in how a child's brain is wired. There are some biological complexities that we don't fully understand and are continuing to learn more about, but it is a condition that we believe someone is born with. It's part of who you are. It makes up who you are. And we believe that it's a difference that will last throughout the course of your lifetime. There is a small body of research to suggest that some people sort of outgrow their symptoms of autism. What that means, there are lots of different sort of theories and opinions on, but generally for most people, it is a difference that you are born with that will persist throughout the course of your life. It is really defined by differences in two areas of functioning. The first being differences in social communication. This includes things like how you demonstrate social reciprocity, how you understand and demonstrate nonverbal social communication behaviors, how you make and maintain social relationships. So social communication is one first defining factor. And the second is defined by differences in restricted interests and repetitive behaviors. People use different terminology to talk about this. You'll sometimes hear restricted interests referred to as affinities. They might be a special area of interest or expertise. And this is also the category under which we see sensory processing differences. So either over or under reactivity to sensory stimuli. Zach, I'll pass it to you just to see what you might add as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that the most important part is that we really embrace and understand that this is a part of who a person is. It's like being left-handed. It's not something we're trying to take away or remove or cure. It really is our obligation as supports, therapeutic providers, medical providers, educators, is really to help them develop the tools that they need and to address the things that are causing challenges for them and how they're accessing the world around them. But I agree wholeheartedly with your description. I think it was very simple and very helpful. And just, again, most importantly, there's nothing wrong with them. We're just trying to help them to find ways to navigate the world around them.
Thank you both on that. I do see a couple hands now, so we'll go in order and get to as many of them as we can. Laura Amico, do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Hi, thank you all for the great presentation. I wanted to ask about, well, my son's on his first year of his IEP, and his classroom teacher and the school nurse have done an incredible job this year with toileting schedules, as well as sensory needs. He was not offered OT or sensory needs in his IEP with his evaluation, and I'm wondering how we carry forward next year the work that the classroom teacher and the school nurse are doing to meet these needs.
Yeah, I'll hop in, and if anybody else has anything they want to add, please feel free to join. So Laura, I'm really glad that you're having a wonderful experience with your current classroom teacher and nurse. Most importantly, the thing that guides the clarity and agreements between the school district and the family is that IEP. So making sure that the IEP includes benchmarks that are targeting what those challenges are around toileting and sensory needs for your student. In the event, just for my own clarity, just really quickly, if you're still able to unmute, was an occupational therapy evaluation done and your child was found ineligible for the service or not needing it, or did they not do an occupational therapy evaluation? Oh, I don't know if she can still unmute.
Hi, yes, I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
Yes, he was evaluated by OT and was not eligible for OT services.
Okay, understood. And so if there are sensory strategies or sensory interventions that your child needs that don't necessarily rise to that clinical educational therapeutic level, they can still be documented in the IEP as accommodations that need to be there for your child. So that would be important to put that there so that it's part of that agreement between your family and our district. And then going into next school year, we should be reflecting on who the teacher will be and having those opportunities to have conversations to make sure we do carry over that toileting plan and those interventions to make sure your son has the most successful transition as possible. It is my expectation that that wonderful experience that you're having right now does continue year over year over year, and that shouldn't be something that you have to worry about because that's our accountability to you and your family. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
no
Laura. I'm going to keep going right down the line here. Tiara M, want to go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, thank you for all the information that you guys been providing so far. I just have a question. There goes my son in the background. I have a question about why is it that a child who has been diagnosed with autism, they can receive the ABA services at home, but when evaluated for BPF enrollment, they are ineligible for ABA services in the classroom? I feel as though if the child is already eligible for ABA services in the home, then automatically it should be that they are allowed, ABA services in the classroom as well.
Tiara, I'm so glad you asked this question because I bet there are 50 other people on this call with the same question. What it comes down to is the two different mandates that the medical staff versus the school staff function under. So medical staff function under a medical necessity mandate. And so the structure for providing services and instruction comes from a different lens and different overarching philosophy. In an education, our mandate is least restrictive environment, least restrictive intervention. And so what we have to do in all evaluations for services in schools is look at the student's progress as it relates to accessing their classroom environment, services and supports necessary to help them access the general curriculum. And so that ABA evaluation, when we do it in school, is specifically looking at how your child's skills and abilities stack up against what we're able to offer and support in the classroom, and whether or not your child is making progress along that general curriculum without that service in place. And I think another really important thing to add here is that teachers receive behavioral training as part of their licensure programming. It's certainly not the same as what we receive as a behavior analyst, but they are working on skill development in the classroom. They are working on, do I need to slow down, Joshi? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Sorry.
You process very quickly.
I know. I know.
It a little bit slower.
I'm just so excited Tiara asked this question. Thank
And
you.
we love to have you here, of course.
Yes, I will slow down. And so the teachers are developing skills and strategies that they are shaping for your child. And so when we do that applied behavior analysis assessment in school, it's really looking at whether or not those interventions that are in place at the class-wide level and small group level that the special educators provide are allowing that growth and access to occur. And if it is, then we wouldn't add an additional service because that actually takes away from access to those other special education supports, because there's only so many hours in a school day. And so if we add more applied behavior analysis, that's limiting some other special education intervention. I hope that helps to answer the question. And always, just one more point, if you're unhappy with the evaluation we've provided, you do have rights as a parent. And I want to make sure you understand that if you feel that we've done it wrong, or we've missed the boat, or we've messed it up, you have the ability to say, I am not satisfied with the outcome of this evaluation, and I would like an independent evaluation for someone else to take a look at that information. Or if it's an applied behavior analysis evaluation, you can also reach out directly to me, and I'd be happy to review it and have a conversation with you as well.
Thank you so much. Just doing a quick departure and see one more question that I think would really benefit the entire group. So I'm going to ask it here. The question is, can you speak more to the why? A lot of parents blame themselves for their child being diagnosed with autism, thinking that maybe they did something during pregnancy or didn't do something right. Can you please share more about that and dispel this rumor? Please speak to parents who carry a lot of shame and grief. First, I would say I think it's Latia that asked that. Gosh, that really does resonate. I think if I can just say personally for 1 minute, it's such an important question because it resonates with, I can't imagine who that doesn't resonate with. So I'm eager to hear our guests speak to that, but it's a really great one.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. And I want to say first that the why we don't all know the answer to. We don't have all the answers right now. And I can't tell you, I wish I had one easy answer to say this is why some people are born autistic. I don't have the answer to that, but I can tell you that we know for sure that autism is not something that is caused by an action or inaction of a parent or caregiver during pregnancy or early childhood. It is not a condition that is controlled by the things that you have done or that you haven't done. And so as much as you are able to relinquish that that shame or guilt, I think the stronger you'll be able to move forward as an advocate for your child. We do understand that there are, in some cases, some really complex genetic underpinnings. There are some sort of neuroimmune implications that folks are learning more and more about. And it really is autism is a complex sort of whole body condition that impacts all sorts of aspects of your child's body, including their brain. So it is complicated. We don't know the why, but we do know for sure that it is not something caused by parents or caregivers in any way.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll go back up here. Heidi, go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Can you hear us, Heidi?
Okay, sorry.
Okay, no, that's
Can
okay.
you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I kept clicking on the
Oh, I know.
the chat. Anyway, so my son attended BPS when for a year and a half of K0 and a half of year of K1, and it was a really bad experience. So I ended up pulling him, and I homeschooled him for the last 9 years. When he was in school, he had an extensive IEP, full ABA, full speech, full occupational therapy, the max on everything. Now he was accepted to Boston Arts Academy. He's been there for this past year on a 504, and I'm really concerned. He's doing great, all A's. So automatically everybody's like, oh, he's fine. And it's kind of driving me nuts because I'm constantly trying to talk to the teachers. I'm just wondering, should I be pushing for an IEP? Because I'm not getting the feedback that I need. I mean, there was a shutdown, what they do in the, what is it, an emergency services thing as if a shooter's in the building. He didn't understand what was going on. He has CAPD. He was in the corner thinking that there was an actual shooter in the building, has never experienced anything like this before. It freaked him out. He's seeing a counselor at school, which is great. That was in his 4504, but I'm just wondering, should I be pushing for an IEP? And I'm a little nervous because of the fact that he's getting all A's, that they might try to push him out of the 504.
So Heidi,
any help?
Yeah, happily. First of all, great that you did so well with your son at home, and he's returned and he's at Boston Arts Academy, such a great school. So
Yeah.
wonderful. And I also understand your concern. So 504 is just as protected and legally bound as an IEP. They just live under different laws, right? So an IEP lives under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. And a 504 lives under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So a 504 is more all encompassing. It's in all areas. You have the right to those accommodations everywhere. And so the key ingredient between a 504 plan and an IEP is actually that specially designed instruction piece. So a 504 can include all of the supports that your child needs to be successful in school, all of those accommodations, all of those things, and should be followed just as strongly as an IEP is. And so that would be where you would alert, you could alert our Office of Equity. You could reach out to us in the Office of Specialized Services if you feel like your 504 plan is not being implemented. And you have every right under that plan to have all of those things implemented just like you would as an IEP. It sounds like what he's not needing right now, and it's a credit to your wonderful homeschooling, is that specially designed instruction, because he is accessing the curriculum with those accommodations in place. And so I would actually say that instead of seeking a different tool, it's really holding us accountable to the tool that you have, right? That 504 plan is just as legally valid as that IEP, and we are obligated to implement it. So if we're not doing that, you should let us know, and then we can help to make sure it gets implemented. Does that help?
It does. I just didn't know if it was as legally binding. And I wanted to make sure that, it was, because And hopefully they don't try to take that away because it's very helpful for him, the untimed tests and the extra time on things.
Yep. As long as your child continues to have a disability, you are eligible for that 504 plan.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Caleb, you've been waiting so patiently. Go ahead if you can unmute.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So I want to thank you guys all for all this information. I actually used to be an ABA therapist way back. And I've been in the human service field for some time now. My question is for our daughter, she has recently transitioned from the Titan, now going to Charlestown, 7th grade. The transition has been kind of rough with her, especially with the uptick of behaviors, including, hurting others or breaking things within the classroom. And my main focus is trying to help her communicate better because she doesn't have all the words. Is it possible, even though we recently had the IEP meeting a few months back, to talk about hopefully getting some type of communication device to maybe help and seeing if that helps with the behaviors? I'm just kind of like not sure. We're not sure what to do right now because there's such a big uptick in her behaviors right now in the school.
So Caleb, my first concern anytime we see a change in behavioral presentation of a student is we need to look closely at how that environment may not be supporting your child, right? So before we look at what your child might be doing wrong, we should be looking at how the environment around your child has changed that has caused potentially some changes for the child, right? And so that's something to investigate with your IEP team. To potentially consider going in and doing an observation to see maybe how this new building is different than the building that your child was in before. And then to your key question, not to go too far afield, you can ask the team to reconvene, or you can just submit in writing a request for what's called an adaptive technology or an augmentative and alternative communication assessment. And then we can process that assessment. Typically it would include trialing a device with your child so that we can see how they do with it. One of our district communication specialists who is an expert in that area would work directly with the team with your child and focus on whether or not that is a helpful intervention and support for your child. So I would encourage you, based on what I'm hearing, to hit it from both of those points. Look at how the environment around your child has changed and may not be supporting your child in this new environment, and also potentially put in writing that request for evaluation.
Great. Gosh, I'm looking at how much time we've got. Time certainly for a few others. Let's see. Dagma, am I saying your name right? Dagma, if you can hear us, you can go ahead and unmute. Okay, well, we'll wait. Maybe we'll circle back if can you hear us? Okay. We will circle back. I see something else I see Stephanie's, do I see Janesa has a good question? Andrea, is that one that you could read aloud that I'm seeing from the chat?
Sure. I'll just read off a question from the chat. My son just started services with BPS, and I was wondering how to keep track of my son's progress in the classroom.
So we have several standard reporting outlets that you can expect to receive. So there are progress reports that go home for all of our students on IEPs at the same schedule and frequency as our general education students. So for some schools, that's 3 times a year. For other schools, it's 4 times a year. You would want to ask the school leader in your building what schedule they're on. In addition to that, you get an annual review summary at that IEP meeting every year, where we should be specifically speaking to your child's progress as it relates to the IEP objectives. That should also be included in the progress reports. And if you want more frequent check-ins, that's something that you can actually include as part of your IEP team discussion. So some parents want a weekly report sent home with some updates on the student's progress, monthly. You can also participate in any consultation services that your child has as part of their IEP, where you can actually be a part of those conversations that are going on. But just sort of summarizing quickly, there's the annual review discussion you should have at every IEP meeting about your child's progress relative to their IEP goals. You should be receiving written progress reports, either 3 or 4 times a year, depending on your school's schedule. And through that IEP process or conversation with your school's team, you can request more frequent updates and communication as well.
Okay. Sounds helpful. I see, did we have another, Sarah, did we have another one more question in the chat you saw that you wanted to ask, or should I go right? Okay. I see Laura Amico's hand up. Laura, do you hear us? Do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Hi, thank you again for letting me ask another question. I feel like I'm coordinating a lot of service providers between all the service providers at school and then our private service providers. We're only a year into the diagnosis, and I feel like you guys know so much and I know so little. The learning curve is really steep. I'd sort of hoped for more help with that from the school and haven't gotten it. I ask at the same time about, again, going back to my son's IEP reconvene that's coming up either in the spring or the summer. When we met over the summer, it was a district team that wrote the IEP, and many of the people on the team had direct experience with autism, and they did a really great job writing the IEP. At the school level, we're not seeing the same thing, that the coasts and others just don't have the experience with autism. And so when we reconvened in the fall, I didn't feel like we had the same level of expertise. Should I be bringing our private providers into our IEP meetings? That gets really crowded and I'm hesitant to do it.
And it can also get really expensive, right? Paying all of those people to come. You're welcome to bring anybody you would like to your IEP meeting, so you should never feel discouraged from doing that. That being said, if you find yourself in a place where you're concerned that the team working with your child maybe isn't responding to your concerns the way that you would like, or is not seeming to have a deep enough knowledge in the areas that you'd like for them to know about, I would encourage you to reach out to the assistant director for special education that's attached to your child's school. So if you ask the coordinator of special education who the assistant director is, they can put you in touch with that person, and that person can sort of sit down with you and really hear what it is you're not feeling like you're receiving from your school-based team, and try to then problem solve those challenges at a different level, where it could just be that might be a skill deficit of the team. And then the assistant director can put other people in touch with you and your circle of supports, so that we can make sure that we're addressing those things. Most importantly, if something doesn't feel right to you, chances are that there's something either that needs to be explained better or differently, or that needs to be looked at differently. So trust your gut and always feel comfortable raising those issues or concerns. You also obviously have the right to access advocacy networks. And so there's a variety of organizations. I'm sure that SpEdPAC would be more than happy to put you in touch with one if you felt like you needed someone with just a little bit more experience on your side. Not that the school district's not on your side, but sometimes it can feel like more assuring to have someone who's not a part of the district sitting with you. And then, of course, engaging with those medical providers that are a part of your team as well is really, really critical, because they can also help with that gut check of, does this seem right? When you review the IEP with your primary care physician or your developmental pediatrician. But most importantly, if something's not feeling right at the school, your next step would be to go to the assistant director in the school, and they can help to connect you with, like, for example, someone like me, who has an area of specialty that can really lean into a part of something that maybe isn't feeling right for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Great. Thanks, Laura. I think we have time for one more, so I'm excited about that. Dolores, you want to go ahead and ask your question? I think you're muted, but can you hear us?
Hi, yes.
Hi,
Hi,
Dolores.
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
I want to say thank you for having this kind of meeting, and my son, Alan George Deshaun Smith, is mildly autistic. A few years ago, it was like things was extremely crazy. Going to dealing with the IEP, going to the IEP meeting, it was very, very hard. Because every time what they say on the IEP, that's not what they actually practice. My daughter is, it's not what it's actually practiced. So if they say they're gonna be doing a certain services that he's gonna be getting, he usually don't get that. But for some reason, this year he turned 15, and I see a lot more improvement. I see him doing much better, enjoying school, even though he would miss the bus, or that doesn't happen as often as it used to. It used to be a lot worse. So there is a lot of improvement in the transportation that he's getting from door to door. And I see with the help of him, I give him D3 vitamins, and I see that's also make significant improve as well. And he enjoy going to school. He's like, even though he always arrived late, because he's like, I'm going to school. So he's he like to help around, and he knows everybody in school, and he doesn't want to go to a different school. He want to stay where he's at. So when I got the IEP last year, I had help. I had to bring somebody with me to help to do the IEP in a way that would help him. But I feel like if things were working the way it was, the IEP, the way it was draft, everything was working, why should we need to change it again this year?
So you don't have to make major changes every year. The meeting every year is to discuss and make sure that we're updating the goals, we're looking at the services, and we're thinking about what's needs to happen for your child. And so we are required every single year to meet to review that IEP to make sure it's still meeting your child's needs. But the most wonderful thing is you are the driver of this machine as the parent, right? And so if we propose a change or we try to do something that you don't feel is right or correct in your heart, you have the ability to exert what's called stay put. You can reject that change and you can stay put to those original services and supports. And then we can keep meeting to discuss it more to come to a more agreed upon position. And so I would encourage you, if you're going to that annual meeting, and you feel like we're proposing something that's actually going to take away from or not adequately support your child, use that ability to either partially accept or reject that IEP and specifically tell us what it is that you're disagreeing with so that we can get back together and meet with you, look at some new data, and make some thoughtful responses aligned with you. And you're also a member of the team, so your voice is really, really important to that conversation.
Does that help, Dolores? A little bit. I hope so. What a cutie in the background. Well, listen, I think we've, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. It is 8:29. Gosh, I see one more hand. All right, we can take one more question. Thanks. Is that fine with both of our presenters to hang on for one more question? Okay. Hope, go ahead if you can hear this and ask your question, and we'll be swift. All right. Well, I think we can't. I think we've got some tech issues. All right. What I'd like to do to make sure that we're honoring the commitment to end exactly on time, I want to first and foremost thank our speakers for the evening, Dr. Nowinski and Zach and his team, for coming to speak about all the issues that so closely affect all of our families at home, when we walk outside of home, when we walk into school, everywhere you show up, all the things they addressed and the questions you brought to them from your heart, as I said, I'm sure are shared by so many other people. So I personally thank you for also braving the rain, even though it meant cuddling in on your couch, to ask questions that are difficult to ask, hear things that are often difficult to hear, and continue to be the best advocate you can be for your child, your grandchild, whoever it is you're taking care of, and for really being there for one another. You know so much as parents. You are the ultimate experts, and sharing the knowledge you have with certainly everyone within this membership and any chance you get is a really, really valuable tool. So again, to be respectful of time, thank you to everyone who came to present, all the interpreters who came to support, those of you who were handling the chat, and most importantly, our members who keep the questions coming and keep sort of the faith alive to keep moving on to another day where it will only get better and better, we hope, with harder and harder work. So really appreciate all of you. And a quick reminder about the next meeting on April 25th. Mark your calendars. It's the topic is on summer learning, ESY, 5th quarter, and then we'll have one meeting after that, which talks specifically about ADHD. So that's on May 23rd, and that will also be our board elections. So get excited and get your most civic-minded hat on to run for or recruit members that you think would love to be a part of our organization. So with that, thank you so much, and good night, everyone.